everybody. It's your girl, Michelle, with Girls Talk Real Talk, because guess what? When girls talk, just about anything can happen. So, today on our show, we have Miss Erica Brooks. So, Erica, why don't you introduce yourself to our listening and viewing audience?
Hello, everyone. I am Erica F. Brooks. Most people know me as the founder of I Know My Value. And basically, it is a faith-based marketplace business. I know my value because Jesus paid the price. My specialty is basically helping people tap into their ability to get wealth. I like to say God has given us the ability to get wealth. I provide the roadmap, but we know that that's holistic. Number one, knowing who we are because of whose we are, and also using our gifts because we understand our gifts will make room for us.
Okay, well, welcome again, Erica, to our show. I am really ecstatic to meet you and to share this moment with you. So I want to jump right into it because I'm curious as to how you came up with I Know My Value.
You know what? If I'll be honest with you, it was probably around 2011. I had been for years. I can't even. I don't even know how far back. Maybe probably since I was 18 years old, before I even knew much of anything. Have been pouring into women, and even when I didn't know my worth. So fast forward, entered into ministry in 2006. Was doing women's ministry, and the Lord gave me I Know My Value. And at that time, to be honest with you, I did not truly know my value. I was still dumbing myself down. I was still just trying to fit in. I still had approval addiction, but I didn't know why, but I went with it. And when I really began to go on a spiritual journey, he tied it to I know my value because Jesus paid the price. There was some blood that was shed for me. I used to thought my value was caught up in a title. I used to think my value was caught up in a particular social economic class. I used to think that my value was based on a relationship. I thought that he was the prize, and then I soon learned that I was the prize. And so it was just a combination of things of finding myself and really getting spiritually grounded that I realized that you don't know who you are until you know whose you are, and that's where your value comes from. And then I began to use that. And not only for ministry, but also in the marketplace. Know your value in the marketplace. Yes, you can be a believer, but it's okay to charge for your services because the word tells us that our gift makes room for us and bring us before great men. So learning how to position ourselves and know our value spiritually, personally, and in the marketplace.
That is awesome. I think so many people need to understand and know their value. My audience knows that I'm very transparent, and it took me several years to know and understand what knowing your value really means. To be able to get into that space, because we can know who we are and not know our value. And that is so very important. I shared with someone a while ago that there was a song on the radio. It was a song on the Sirius XM radio that I listened to in the car. And in the lyrics of the song, it says that I am to die for. And that stuck with me ever since I heard that. And so when I was talking to this individual, they was like, life is so difficult. It's so hard. I just don't understand why I have to go through all the things that I have to go through. And everybody keeps telling me the same thing about God doesn't put more on you than what you can bear. And they're going through all of that. And so I just let them finish talking. And I said, do you understand what God said about you when he stretched his arms, lowered his head, and died? And she just kind of looked at me dumbfounded. I said, he literally said that you are to die for.
Wow. I love
and
it.
I think that really begins to speak to what our value is. And for us to really step into that space that gives us permission to say, okay, this is who I am. I know my value. So I'm not going to settle for stuff that demeans me.
Yes.
I'm not going to allow people to say things about me that does not add value. I'm not going to treat myself as if I'm not valuable.
Yes.
And so in that, I think we have to begin to get into that
Mhm.
space to be able to see that as we maneuver our lives, as we go on this journey called life, that there are things that we will experience that will show us, okay, you're acting beneath your value.
Mhm.
And then there'll be other things that will begin to speak to us and tell us, okay, I need you to step it up because now I need you to realize that you're really worth more than what you're giving yourself credit for. So, in the work that you do in your organization, I know my value, and in the people that you work with, what are some of the tips or tools that you can drop for our listening and viewing audience for them to begin to step up to the plate and understand the importance of knowing their value?
I would say the first tool and tip is to really know who you are. And when I say know who you are, sometimes we don't know who we are outside of a title. Sometimes we don't know who we are outside of, and not just a career title, it could be outside of being a wife, outside of being a daughter, outside of being a mother. So, who is Erica? Who is Michelle without all of the hoopla? Who are you without the accolades, without the degrees? But first, identify who you are and understand that your value is not based on what the world says is success. Your value is not based on somebody else's, definition. Maybe, as a child, some things were said because of this, and that. There was some comparison, and you based your comparison on my sibling was a straight A student and I was a C student, or I struggled. So first, identifying who you are without all the accolades, and that's who you are spiritually. Because as I mentioned earlier, until you know who you are, you don't know who you are. That would be tip number one. In addition, when you determine who you are, then determine, what do I stand for? What are my core values? And when you really know your value, you will begin to set boundaries, because you understand, because I am important, I know my value, then I can't allow people to treat me any kind of way. And I believe that many times we have, when we didn't know our value, we have accepted something that was unacceptable. We have settled for maybe a condescending manager. Maybe we've settled for relationships that we knew that didn't align with our purpose and were just someone that was sucking the life out of us. So being able to set healthy boundaries, and not only that, stick to those boundaries. Also, when we're a part of that is also not allowing someone to tell you who you are not. Let the Bible be the guide. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am the head and not the tail. I am above and not beneath. I am blessed going in and blessed going out. I'm a royal priesthood. Go to the source to determine who you are. And as it relates to the marketplace, I would say knowing your value is going back to scripture. Your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men. That also means making room for you in the marketplace. So think about when you needed products and services and you invested in that product and you invested in that service. Why do you think that your gift is not worth investment? Why do you think, because you are a believer that and you are a giver, that you have to give everything away? You've already sown your time. You've already sown your resources. You've already sown so many different things. So know that you can put a price tag on that thing that's going to open the door and make room for you. And you don't have to be guilty about it. Knowing your value is also protecting one of the biggest assets that we have, is the commodity of time.
Mm-hmm.
Time is something that we can never get back. That means that I no longer have to answer every phone call, because I have to balance it out. Maybe this is my rest time. Maybe this is my reset time. Maybe this is my self-care time. And so tying in with that, and I'll end with this, self-care. When you know your value, you will put on your own oxygen mask first. We know the analogy, well, not the analogy, the analogy, I'll say that we use with the airplane. Put on your own oxygen mask before you help someone else. So when we know our value, we're not going to feel guilty when we say, you know what, my friend is having this event, but I know that I'm absolutely exhausted. Let me send a seed. Let me pray. Let me forward the flyer. Support can happen in different ways. It doesn't mean you always have to show up when you're already on E. And so when you truly know your value and you know who you are, you're going to be okay with taking care of yourself first. You're not going to jump in the pool. I used to call myself a first responder. I was always the person that, as people, I had a friend that said I would throw on my fire suit and I would be on go whenever someone called. Guess what? I wasn't mature enough to know that that person or that situation wasn't my assignment. And because I was a first responder, I was burnt out from something that God didn't even call me to help with. Because I was a first responder, I was given resources where God didn't have me plant. And I was saying, Lord, my harvest is not matching my seed. Why? Because I wasn't led to give. So when you really know your value, you will understand boundaries. You will understand balance, and you will take care of you first so that you can be more effective in taking care of others, whether it's your husband, your children, and being in purpose without being on zero.
Oh, wow. Great tips. That was awesome. So I remember reading a Facebook post, and matter of fact, I kept the post, that said, I witnessed my mom live through a toxic and abusive marriage. Day by day, her husband chipped away at her, killing her spirit. God provided several ways of escape in a 40-year span, but fear of not being able to survive without him had its grip. She thought she could fix him. How many of us thought we could fix and change people in the name of love? Yikes. That spoke volumes to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that it spoke to me is because a lot of people don't understand why she stays or why he
Yeah.
stays. And a lot of it plays right back into what you've been talking about already, knowing your value,
Mm-hmm.
realizing what it needs to have. So you were saying in that post that she had been in that relationship for over 40 years.
Yes.
Okay, so that means that she was in that relationship while you were growing up.
She's still in the relationship.
Oh, wow. Okay, all
Yes.
right. So let's back up a little bit, because now this brings a whole new perspective to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because not only were you a witness to what was going on, you developed emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of that during this period of time that you were in the household with them. So let's go back a little bit and talk about how did that play out for you? How did you determine who you were and what your boundaries were going to be in that type of situation, being raised in that type of household?
I saw my mom. My mom was very nurturing. She would always, come in and tuck us in at night, peep in the middle of the night and, check on us. But although she loved on us and she told us that she loved us every day, that little girl in me saw my mother as weak because she didn't have a voice. No matter what he said, no matter how toxic, I didn't even know the word toxic was back then, no matter how toxic it was, no matter how hurtful it was, she never corrected him. She never spoke up. I didn't know anything about, I didn't grow up in church. I didn't know anything about spirits back then, but now knowing whenever he walked in a room, the atmosphere changed. It's almost like it dropped in a negative way. People didn't want to be around him because he had this, this aura of control. And it was, I think God, it was trauma, but I didn't know it at the time until you're out of it. Sometimes you don't know. It was, I remember probably early elementary, I remember physical abuse, where I remember him pushing my mom in the bed and her finger breaking back. And I think she sprained her finger, but never got medical attention because they would probably ask questions. I know that she has like something that looks like staples on her chin because, that was physical abuse. But even though it's from elementary, you can still see the scar. As we got older, it wasn't physical abuse. It was more verbal abuse. You couldn't talk unless you were yelling. Everything was almost like, this is my house. That's the way you try to command the space. Now, what I believe is, I'm 45. My mother has been married to him since I was 4, but he was never a father figure. Now I have four siblings. I mean, I have three. It's four of us. I have three siblings. They have my three siblings have the same father. I have a different father. He's none of our father. So what I believe is when my mom met him, he was in the military, she was in the projects, and you have four kids. He is your savior. He moved you out of the projects into a house, and he was able to do everything that he wanted to do, and she didn't leave, you know. And so just with the children, there was no boundaries with discipline, etc. And so for me, it was just, I would just say, oh my God, I would just feel like, where's your voice? You need to speak up. This is wrong. I was just waiting for her to show up, waiting for your foot to be put down, waiting for you to, we didn't care about the house. Children, sometimes we parents think that you care about this and that, but you really care about, say, we're afraid. I see how your spirit is like your almost like your continence has changed because your insecurity. And so what I believe is because I saw my mother, although I love my mother, we were close to my mother, but I saw that as a weakness, that as instead of me running to abuse, as I got older, I was on the opposite spectrum where I had a zero tolerance. Although I knew that nobody's perfect, it's like one thing and I'm out. I had like zero tolerance. I also, I had my daughter when I was 23, and her father and I went our separate ways when she was 2. So I didn't date, or only time I did date, rather, my daughter was at her father's house, or she was maybe with my sister or my best friend, because I didn't want to expose my daughter to men. And I really didn't want to get married because I grew up with a bully as a stepdad. And so I was really just almost like prejudging. I don't want to bring anyone around my daughter. So I absolutely didn't expose my daughter to men. And then there were opportunities that I could get married, but it was fear, of, is he going to be, of what I grew up with. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I didn't know why I would, when a relationship got too serious, I would break it off, or, guys would leave because they would say, well, you say I can't come over. I know you're seeing somebody. I said, no, I have a daughter. And even though my daughter may have been 4 at the time, 4-year-olds are very smart. They kind of know, this is Johnny, this is Joe, and this is somebody else.
Exactly.
So I just always, not that I didn't do whatever it is that I wanted to do, my child just wasn't involved in it. And I didn't get too serious because I really didn't want her to have a stepdad, because I had a bully for a stepdad. Now that I'm spiritually mature, I would now use the word warlock, because it was manipulation, it was control, it was toxic, it was abuse. It was, I didn't even know what a soul tie was. My mother was so soul tied. It is oppression. And you tried to keep us oppressed as well. So you couldn't even communicate effectively with the children, because it's supposed to be a package deal, but it was like jealousy, because my mom was nurturing. Whenever she, was like loving on us, it's almost like jealousy. Not almost, it was jealousy. And we're not in competition with you.
Wow, that is important to bring out, because I think a lot of times we don't think about what that looks like. We don't mm-hmm. think about how other people may be viewing what is going on from the outside looking in. Even from your childhood and the things that you experienced, by him being the one that always needed to be in control and have the spotlight, in essence, on him. What did you say to yourself? How did you set those boundaries to where you had the no tolerance? Because there had to be a conversation that you had with yourself at some point in time when you said, I'm not going to do this. This is not going to be how I live my life.
Yeah. I just felt like, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't even know the word dysfunction, but I said, this is not what it is. This is for the birds. This is just not how it's supposed to be. It doesn't matter that, you've been married for so many years and you have this amount of children. I'm the person, if I had 20 kids, we're going to go to a homeless shelter, because this is not the way, that's supposed to be. So I just think that even as a child, I didn't even, like I said, I had no spiritual background, no spiritual maturity, but I believe God was speaking to me. And just, you said Holy Spirit is something in your intuition, something just didn't feel right. When you walk in a room, you get that negative vibe. I've got that not just from here, from other people as well, where it just didn't sit well. So as I got older, when I met people that had anger issues or control, I knew it was almost like a familiar spirit. I knew that I can't do that because I can't change him, because X amount of years in, my mom is still in that situation, and that can lead to oppression, and I refuse to be oppressed.
So you had said that you have other siblings, and where do you fall in the line of you and your siblings?
I'm the baby.
I'm the baby too, out of four.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit, because it gives me a greater insight
Mm-hmm.
into how you came about the organization,
Mm-hmm.
because now we get the backstory of how you ended up determining and how God used you to know your value. So you
Mm-hmm.
had mentioned that in 2011, God had given you that title. And
Mm-hmm.
even in the post, you had said in 2010, when God gave me the name I Know My Value, I didn't know why and didn't fully know my value. Although I was already leading women's ministries, God charged me to be a safe place for women, regardless of the situation, and pour in with transparency beyond the church walls. I get flooded with inboxes from strangers needing a safe release. I get it now. So as you were coming out of being in your mom's house, and you're stepping into your own, and God has now given you this charge of what your purpose is and what he wants you to do, how did you step into that realm? Because sometimes we can know what we want to do,
Yeah.
but we don't know how to step into the purpose.
I think that I was thrown into it because I suffered with I would always dumb myself down. Like I always wanted to, I was always a seer, and I was always someone that may have had revelation but didn't know it, right? Because like I said, I was spiritually ignorant, and I wanted to be in the back. And so I would be feeding stuff to other people. And a lot of times the same thing that God gave me, they was using that, right? And so what happened was every ministry that I went to, someone would try to put me in the front. Oh, you're going to teach Bible study. You're going to be a women's ministry. You're going to do this. And I ended up leading leaders. And so it was like, even though it wasn't like, ready or not, here I come. It was like, you're thrown into this thing. And so what I realized is, even before that, because I think it's not about a title, people were always coming to me for counsel. And even strangers on Facebook, they would share very intimate details of their life. And I'm thinking, well, they have a pastor or they have a best friend and say, I can't tell anybody this. And then they would just share, or they would say, hey, Erica, can we go do lunch? And I would think they wanted to do lunch for business. And the women would just weep and share, whether it's past childhood trauma, whether it's I'm in this relationship with this married man and I know that it's wrong, but I don't know how to get out. And when I realized that people are trusting me with the intimate details of their life, and then they'll say, well, you didn't judge me, you didn't beat me up. I realized that was definitely part of purpose, because people were getting beat up. Even when they had spiritual leaders, they couldn't be real. They couldn't come and be naked and not ashamed. And so what I was doing the work, but didn't call it work because it was just natural, what people reaching out. And so when God gave, I was doing it before I know my value. When God gave me, I know my value, it's okay, this is going to be, I've been doing women's ministry. This is going to be women's ministry. And then fast forward, I changed it into, because I already had business and marketplace and I was lumping it together. So I separated, kind of ministry and marketplace, even though I do marketplace ministry. So it's really, I know my value is the name I know my value now is under I know my value consulting, but I still use the original, like I know my value kind of DBA for ministry, because who I am in ministry is never going to be separated from the marketplace. I've tried so many times and it just doesn't work. And so it's really just telling women, and I deal with men, but I really feel like my assignment is more so women. When somebody has done something and they're already broken, it is not my job to judge them. It is not my job to beat them up. You're already convicted and you need to release. It is my job to speak life into you. It is my life to, give you the word, old things have passed away. All things have become new. There's no condemnation for those that are in Christ Jesus. And now how can we get back to this state? And so part of, I believe, knowing your value and teaching people that is that you are not your mistake. You are not your decision. Yes, you may have done X, Y, and Z. However, you can recover. And so I believe that it has been I don't want to call it a ministry, but I'll say that it has been more of a movement of restoration, a movement of, it doesn't matter. People have been pulpit bullied. I've been pulpit bullied by me being very honest about my past. And what I want to tie this into my past. I believe that maybe those daddy issues, and just, not having that guidance. And he was so strict, you look at a boy, you got to be sleeping, just so strict. So when I got out the house, I got very promiscuous. And so I believe that because I couldn't even really talk to a boy on the phone. So it's like when you're free, there's nothing, no balance, no boundaries. I'm free now. I can do what I want to do. I left Columbus. I moved to Atlanta, and I'm going to have a hot girl summer, winter, fall, everything, you know. And so promiscuity. And so I've always been very honest about my testimony. I would say I was the woman at the well. And so it was a lot of things where when God began to call me, because I know my testimony of past promiscuity, that I felt like God couldn't use me. But when I got free enough to believe that that's why God can use me, because when women come to me, I'm transparent. I don't tell them when they say, well, hey, Erica, how have you been celibate or whatever? I don't tell them I'm a superhero. I say, you know what? I'm human just like you, but the word says make no provision for the flesh. When I decided to walk that walk, I stopped putting myself in situations where I could fail. It wasn't that I'm better than you. It wasn't that I'm stronger than you. It's that I know myself and I did something different. So I believe that people don't want you just throwing scriptures at them. People want real stories. They want to say, when you were having this weak moment, what did you do? When you went through this when you saw this growing up, how did you heal? What did you do? I didn't get counseling until, I probably went for counseling in 2016, but it wasn't a good match. It wasn't until 2018 that I got counseling and realized there was some residue there. And that was because I don't even refer to him as my stepdad. I say my mama's husband. That's because my mama's husband had left and their house was paid off and he had put a second mortgage on the house. And so I felt like, he was just doing some very irresponsible stuff. And so I was in my hometown on Christmas and he showed up at my aunt's house and I began to confront him on different things because I'm in financial advising. So I was doing a life insurance policy. And then all of a sudden I just got very frustrated. And I said, how is it that I'm paying your life insurance and you have a wife and you don't even have insurance on your life? Because their policies lapse on paying, I'm doing the things that I felt like you should be doing as a man. You have VA, you have retirement, you have VA disability, the resources are there, plus the house paid off. That second mortgage could be probably $300, So I am feeling very resentful because you're there, my mama's serving you, and you've been gone for about 6 months, and you show up, and it's okay with her. And so I'm really irritated. And so that irritation, I had number one, when I was coming to my hometown, I didn't know I wasn't expecting him to be there. But the simple fact that he was there, it was a trigger for me because she's over there serving him like, welcome home, like he's been there, whatever. No, you don't get to be gone for 6 months and call her every now and then or whatever. Then you show up at her sister's house on a holiday and she's fixing your plate. You slop down one plate and she brings you another plate. Oh my God, I was at 10. And then I'm over there writing life insurance and then it triggered me. Wait a minute. And not only that, I'm paying your life insurance. And so and I began to just throw some things out. He was a cheater. I just said, okay, how, he said something this is what the trigger was. I'm about to buy a car. And he was explaining what kind of car he's going to get. And I was like, hold on, wait a minute. How is it that you can afford a car when you don't have insurance on your life to take care of your wife? And I'm paying your life insurance. I said, that makes no sense to me. And then I gave her the house or whatever. I said, no, you didn't, because you went and put a second mortgage on it. And my mom said he put a second mortgage on it, but what she don't know is I understand I used to be a mortgage lender. You had to sign for it. So it wasn't like he did it on his own, right? You gave into that, right? And so he just was, saying whatever he needed to say. Mm-hmm. And then here's one thing that he said, Barbara doesn't know how to take care of a man. And I went slap off. And I said, she knows how to take care of a man so much that she sacrificed us taking care of you. I said, you were abusive. You came and went as you pleased. I said, you were a cheater. I just went down. I said, he's been in physical fights on my two brothers. You've been in fist fights on my brothers. I just went down a laundry list of stuff. And let's not forget, and I was just throwing stuff out there. And it was like, my aunts were like, it was like two aunts and my cousin. They were like, oh my God, because honestly, and it's so crazy, everybody has always acted afraid of him. God had given me a spirit of boldness in that moment. And then I was throwing, and then he dropped under his breath. He said, well, he dropped his head. And he said, you can say what you want to say. And then I just start bam, 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 going down the line again. And then I said, now look me in my face, demon, and tell me that I'm lying. He literally got up, went all the way outside, like all the way to the end of the street. At that time, someone had dropped him off there. He couldn't even face me because it was kind of like facing giants. When people think of the Goliath, okay, this is a person has been, he's a cursor, he's aggressive, he's angry, he's whatever. Nobody has ever confronted him. And that was a clear sign of, in stature, you're bigger than me or whatever. But because nobody had ever confronted you ever, because people tiptoed around you, the spirit man in me rose up, and the demon in him fled. Now, this is what put me in a bad place with my mom. He went out there. I don't know how long he was out there, but then he came back to the slide door and said, hey, come here. And my mom went out there to see what he wanted. You didn't come over and say whatever to me. You were over there pretending like it didn't happen. And so to me, that was a weakness. You don't know how to confront the issue. Like, where did this come from? Are you good? Are you okay? But you're so soul tied. You're so oppressed. Even after all of that, which was true. I rose up because he disrespected you. You don't know how to take care. He's belittling you while you're serving him. And so I got in counseling because at that moment, I got very angry at my mother. It was probably midnight, and I was sitting up, and I said, okay, I'm about to go and land. I'm from Columbus, but it's about an hour and a half from Atlanta. And then no, you need to stay here. You don't need to drive home, hour plus. I said, no, I'm gone. And my mother came to the window. She was like, where are you going? And I was just staring at her. I couldn't say anything because I felt like I would be disrespectful because I wanted to say, you're so weak. Really? And so I went to counseling, and I withdrew from my mother because, honor. I wanted to be able to show honor. And I felt like that for so long, he's been able to talk to us any kind of way. He's been able to talk to you any kind of way. He's been able to do whatever he wanted to do. And in that moment, you stood over there in the kitchen like nothing happened, silent. When he called you, you went running out there like you always do. Don't come out here and try to make me stay. I'm not spending the night. I'm going home. And I've totally withdrew. But counseling gave me the freedom to withdraw, because people always say, well, that's your mother. Back in the day, that's what people did. They didn't leave, and they didn't talk about, trauma and abuse or whatever. You never know. Her mother could have went through abuse or da, 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 da. And so my counselor, her background was, she had an abusive background. And she talked about how her counselor told her that, and her mother was aware, and her mother didn't do anything. And she said her counselor gave her permission to withdraw because she felt anger and whatever. And so I was silent for about, I don't even know, honestly, I don't know the time frame. And of course, people came up against me, forgiveness. I said, I am a forgiveness, but honor. Would you rather for me to be disrespectful? Sometimes silence, and sometimes you have to set a boundary. So I said, my mindset, I was so angry. I said, that is your Lord, that is your God. And so I just had to get quiet, and I had to do some natural things I went deeply into self-care. I went on the 30, that was December 2018, I think. I went into deep self-care. I started getting massages like every other week. I started detoxing. I did a 31-day fast, and ended up, I haven't went back to meat since. So I'm coming up on 3 years, meatless. And so just really giving myself permission to take care of me. It used to be a time that I couldn't even get a massage without my phone being on because I was that person that had to respond to everything. And so that was like that changing point when I realized you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Before I
Wow.
relocated, I even got a home. I wasn't purchasing, but I moved to a bigger place to have enough space for my mom because I wanted that to be a safe haven. I said, if I move here, are you going to come? Yes. I'm paying way more money than I wanted to pay with just one child. She spent one night there in 6 months. By the grace of God, I was able to get out of that lease, and then I moved, to Atlanta. So what I realized, I've tried to run over there on lunch. Let me check on my mom. Let me see how she's doing. He's spending money like crazy. Let me make sure my mom has this, and that. The life insurance lapsed, so let me make sure I take, because something happens to him, make sure, she can still survive and still, go on. And hey, you want to come to Atlanta? Hey, and I was just constantly throwing a life raft. But here's the thing: what I realized, my mother has 3 surviving siblings. All of them have homes, and all of them have at least 2 plus more extra bedrooms or bathrooms. Each one of my siblings have our own spaces with at least 1 extra bedroom or bathroom. My mom has 6 ways of escape. She doesn't want to be saved. And I had to come to grips with that. This is a situation that she chooses to be in. Not only that, they own, my mom and her siblings owned some land, and they sold that land in the spring, and they got a lump sum of money. They owned over 100 acres of land, so I know that was a good amount of money, even though they're close-lipped about how much it was. So that lets me know, not only do you have the places to go, 6 places to go, you also have the resources to go. That if you wanted to pay, you don't even have to buy again. If you wanted to pay your rent up for a year, 2 years, 3, you got the resources to do it. So you want to be in that situation. And so that is where the knowing your value comes in, and saying, sis, listen, don't let money be your God. Yes, he may be the provider or whatever, but you have to know that God will provide, because as you stay in a situation that's toxic, it's going to constantly, notice I said in the post, chipping away at her spirit. It was no longer physical abuse. It was just chipping away at her spirit. You're saying stuff that's putting her down, or you're gone and she doesn't know where you are. And so you're worried about your husband. Not only that, he has health issues. So, you're the one that does a lot of things for him. And so I would just tell, my message to people is, even with family, because people think that you can't set boundaries with family, you have to set boundaries with family. Sometimes I've seen where people may have siblings that just have a takeover spirit. You have to set boundaries. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. You just say, I'll give an example. If there's a married couple and you have a sibling that comes over and tries to disrespect your spouse, you have to put your foot down. Yes, you love your sister. Yes, you love your brother, but you have to set the boundary. This is you and your husband's house. Set the boundary. Know your value. If you have someone that's kind of always saying, remember when you were this, or remember when you were that. Yes, you may have done this. Yes, you may have done that, but that is not the essence of who you are now. You have to get free enough that it doesn't cripple you when somebody brings up your past. It doesn't stop you. It doesn't oppress you, and just say, you know what? Yes, I did it. Yes, I was, or whatever, and understand that is now, your testimony. And so I'm not saying that it's easy, but I am a proponent of counseling, not just going to talk to your pastor, because guess what? I'm a pastor. I needed something natural. I got scripture. I know how to pray. I know how to fast, and I got seasoned that, but I needed some practical tools, some practical information. That practical information was start journaling. Journal your thoughts. And that journaling was like a release. That practical information was, guess what? You don't have to respond to the text. You don't have to respond to the call. You don't have to go there. Don't put yourself in situations where it's going to be a trigger. I'll give you another example. After that happened and I re-engaged with my mother, I called one day and she put me on speakerphone and tried to make me say, hey, speak to him. That was a trigger for me. You're not going to force this relationship. And so what did I have to do? I had to pull back in, because I get it. You love him, you love me, and you want everything to be cohesive, but I am choosing me. And so You have to choose yourself and be okay with it. Not only that, you have to choose your family. So what if you have a child that feels uncomfortable with someone else? Hey, aunt such and such makes me feel blah, whether it's comparison or bullying, you're chubby, you're thick, and they feel insecure about themselves. You have to say, hold on, don't talk to my child like that. Don't make them feel insecure. And so being able to protect the ones you love, because one of the biggest challenges with trauma is when you don't feel protected by your parents. You got to feel protected. Do I know my mom loves me? Absolutely. Do I know she loves us? Absolutely. Was she abusive to us? No. But by her not having self-worth, she allowed so much. Now, this is something huge. I've never shared this publicly, but I'm so free. Her husband used to, and I had totally forgot because, I think sometimes with trauma, you can forget things. There were times that he walked around with a rifle.
Wow.
And it was just kind of like mumbling under his breath, "It's my house." Now, did he ever point it at us or whatever? But I really, it didn't have I didn't even think about it until maybe like 2 years ago, because I think God just blocked it in my memory that this man is walking around the house territorial with not a 22, not a handgun, but with a rifle. You walking in the hallway, you may walk past the living room, but you want to remind us that this is my house. About 2 years ago, I had a ex-boyfriend share something with me that I had no idea. I didn't date for the first time until I was in 12th grade. And there was one guy who could come over periodically. He told me the first time he came over and he was waiting for me to come to the door that her husband pulled a gun on him.
Wow.
He never told me that. And I'm 40, this was about 2 years ago. Here it is, this many years later. And he told me that. He said, "Do you know that he pulled a gun on me?" And I'm thinking like, wow. And so I would never, it doesn't matter, sometimes the church says, God hates divorce. Well, God does not. God says, love your wife as Christ has loved the church. Are you in a marriage where, you're being loved as Christ has loved the church? Christ is not going to physically abuse, Christ is not going to, in God, we're built up. We're not torn down. And so what I'm grateful for is, I'm not saying that I've arrived, but what I'm so grateful for is sometimes when people come out of toxic situations, they can run to that because they think that's the norm. But I'm so glad that I was able to escape and decide that even when I didn't know my value, and there are times that I've settled, but I did not, I have never been in an abusive relationship. And it's only by the grace of God. It's not that I've done everything so good. And when I saw signs, even when it was hard, I just was like, this just doesn't feel right. Let me trust that intuition. I wasn't even saying the Holy Spirit. Let me trust my gut. Something is telling me. And so I got out of those situations. And I've taught my daughter, the same thing. I now have a granddaughter, and my daughter doesn't allow anyone to keep her daughter. It's me, my childhood best friend, who's like a, aunt to her, or my sister. And so she's very protective as well. But I don't think her protection is more of a curse and fear. It's just now understanding why I didn't let my daughter spend a night certain places or whatever. I don't know what that household, not even thinking about like molestation or whatever, just thinking about, you don't know what's going on the other end. You don't even want the toxic behaviors for your child to be exposed to that and think that's the normal. Well, at their house, they can do this or they can do that, or no.
I think that that's important. There's a couple of things that you brought up that I kind of want to tie back into, because it's very important that we realize that there are times when you have to love people from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that you don't love them. So I don't want anybody to think, even in their own misguided thought process, that when we have to love people from a distance, it's because we've chosen ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in the midst of that is not healthy for me. And so I need to back up. I need to take a back seat to this relationship for this period of time, so that I can take care of me. Because something in me is being triggered. Something in me is unsettled.
Mm-hmm.
Something in me is feeling threatened. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I fit into that space, then that means I need to take a step back and I have to say, okay, let me go and do what the word of God says. Physician, heal thyself.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go and get the help and the support that I need to make sure that I'm making healthy decisions where I'm concerned. And
Mm-hmm.
then also you said something else that I thought was very, very key. Therapy is a good thing as long as you are matched up with a therapist that meets your specific needs.
Mm-hmm.
Every therapist is not for every patient.
Mm-hmm.
So if something in you says that this person is not right from you, they work for you, you don't work for them. Let them know, I don't think this relationship is working for me, and find you someone that it does work with. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't diminish you in any way. What it does is it reiterates that you know what you need, and
Absolutely.
not everybody has the capacity to meet you at the point of your need and then take you where you need to go. I've done counseling myself, and I really believe that having that non-interested third party that does not
Mm-hmm.
have any skin in the game is
Yes.
a good thing, because they're coming from a different position than somebody who knows you, and they have something to lose or to gain based upon whatever the situation is. So that's always a positive thing. We as women have to realize that our value also speaks to our power.
Mm-hmm.
We have to maintain our own power.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about me diminishing anyone else. It's about me stepping into
Mm-hmm.
the space that identifies who I am, shows me my value, my worth, and my power, and then gives me permission to show up as my authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I am and everything that I'm not, I have a right to show up as authentically as I possibly can. So I really thank you, Erica, for sharing that with our listening and our viewing audience, because what it does is it empowers people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there is the poem by Marianne Johnson, My Greatest Fear. And in that poem, it has one very important part that has stuck with me every time I heard it. And I think the very first time that I heard it was on the movie Coach Carter.
Okay.
And at the end of it, it says, who are you not to shine?
Wow.
You know, it does not serve the world for you to shrink or to dumb yourself down in service to others. Because in you shining, you thereby give others permission to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing that we really have to begin to step into that space and to realize, because I'm a firm believer that by me living my purpose out loud and in living color,
Mm-hmm.
I instinctively give other people permission to do the exact same thing.
I believe that. Yes.
And so it makes a difference for us to be able to step into those spaces and to step into our reality. Yes, all of us have a past. Let's put that out there. Everybody has a past. Everybody has done things that they're not necessarily proud of. Everybody has gone through situations that they probably would not share in mixed company. Everybody has. But don't judge me by my last worst day.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Michelle, may I share something?
Sure.
I know that I've shared it kind of in the context of what I was sharing, but I want to make it plain. It doesn't matter what happened to us, and I'm not minimizing whatever has happened to anyone, but healing is our responsibility.
Yes.
How long are we going to give that person, that situation, the power to control us?
Right.
The power for us to not to move forward, the power for us not to trust again, the power for us not to believe that we can be healed or God can do it for us, the power in believing that all relationships are blah, all families are dysfunctional. How long are we going to believe the lies of the enemy? You know, the Bible tells us that Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And so he's destroying families, he's destroying our thought pattern, but it is up to us to follow scripture. God came to give us life and life more abundantly, and it's up to us to live that abundant life. So what does that look like? It is seeking God's face. It's seeking wise counsel, which includes natural counseling. And I do believe it needs to be a neutral third party. Even if I'm not discounting, you can go to your pastor and leader, but it doesn't discount the need for professional counseling. And so when you decide to heal, because sometimes we think if we don't let go of that hurt or let go of that trauma, then it's saying that the person that caused it, that they're right. Or, we want to hold on to it like a Band-Aid, but we have to, get free. We have to be liberated. I don't believe that I could be effective in ministering and encouraging people, woman, man, boy, child, if I did not eat my own medicine, if I did not take my own advice. And so the first thing is, you don't even go to Doubting Thomas. You have that girlfriend or you have that boyfriend that always tells you, just pray about it. Well, guess what? I have prayed about it. Or guess what? I'm so tired and exhausted, I don't even want to pray. So you need to do what you're led to do and what you are instructed to do. And don't say that something doesn't work if you haven't tried it. And so it is just super important to take charge of your future, take charge of your next, and be whole.
That is so very, very important. Because if you don't take charge and live your life, who is? Mm-hmm. There's a difference between existing and living. Absolutely. I can exist in the midst of the mess, but when I live with the fullness of who God created me to be. And so I'm a firm believer in stepping out there. And look, nobody in my family has been on the radio, has a podcast, or I'm an author, is an author.
Yes.
If I would have allowed the limitations that are the natural course of family to be the reason why I did not step into those spaces, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
Absolutely. I love it.
That is one of the most important things, that we begin to challenge ourselves and give ourselves permission to live our best lives now. Because like you said, God created us to live and to live abundantly. So it is up to us to determine what that abundance looks like as we live out our purpose, because we never know if our purpose is the answer to someone else's life question. And if you never discover your purpose, they will never have their question answered.
Wow. I love it.
You know what, Erica, it has been a pleasure speaking with you and conversating with you. So why don't you tell our listening and viewing audience how to get in touch with you if they would like to get in touch with you?
Okay, you can find me on Facebook at a personal page, Erica with a C, Erica F Brooks. A business page, I Know My Value, and it's spelled exactly how it sounds. My email address is Erica, ERICA, at iknowmyvalue.com. I am a licensed financial consultant, so insurance, investments, and also business development. And of course, if you need just empowerment to know your worth, know your value, then I am your girl.
Thank you so much for being on the show today and for sharing your wisdom and giving those tips and tools that people will be able to utilize in their own lives. So everybody, this is your girl, Michelle and Erica with Girls Talk Real Talk, because when girls talk, just about anything can happen. So join us again next week for another fantastic show. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.